themselves. But let's go and do Q&A now. I'm going to put it back on speaker view and move spotlight. Okay. And I think I've got it all set up. So let me see. Oh, Gary, go for it, sir.
I really appreciate the talk, especially the quantitative aspects. I came to a slightly different conclusion, though, about blue shift versus red shift. I used to work on FLIRs, and I know the black body radiation equation. And if you upshifted that black body equation, those frequencies, that curve, if you blue shifted it, you're upshifting it, aren't you? And so you're seeing that infrared peak now in the visible, which would explain why they're glowing. And it would also explain why the remaining energy in the infrared appears to be lower. It's because you're blue shifting or upshifting the frequency of that black body curve. Tell me what's wrong with my logic there.
Oh, that's a good question. That's something that I've not looked into. We wanted to go through the details of that particular camera and the algorithms that it uses to estimate the temperature from the black body. And
yeah, so
that's a good question. You're right. Because if you shift it far enough, then you're going to be on the other tail. Right?
The object could be room temperature or warmer, but if you're upshifting the black body radiation itself, then it would appear to be more visible radiation and less infrared radiation. And so you really do, I think, have to look at, hey, what bands is that instrument sampling? Because they usually compare 2 or 3 bands, right, to calculate a temperature. And so it could be completely wrong analysis because it's dependent upon the classic black body radiation curve, which could be, the entire curve could be upshifted, right, if it's really using anti-gravity.
No, that's a really good point. And it really suggests we ought to see if we can pull the data off the camera that tells us what the amplitudes are in each band so that we can estimate the black bodies ourselves.
Exactly. Okay. All right.
Thank you very much. That's very helpful.
Yeah, thanks, Gary. Okay, so who wants to go next? We did have a ton of stuff in chat. In fact, I'm just kind of scrolling through chat right now. Let me see. Jeremy, go for it, sir.
Hey, Kevin. I wanted to, well, first off, I noticed one of your slides, the photo image was credited to Brett Tingley. And then I think he got that from a patent by Kevin Kremeyer. And I posted the link to that patent in the description. So you could look that up as well, just for the photo credit that came from the patent.
Oh, I see that in your comments. Great, thank you.
The other thing I wanted to ask was, some of my questions got answered already. One of them was going to be about whether spoofing technology might exist to basically fake these things, and how can we distinguish, between spoofing technology and legitimate UAP sightings. But I think some of the distinguishing factors would be transmedium, obviously, right? If it goes into the water, it's really hard to spoof an object that goes in and out of the water. That would be one giveaway characteristic. But anything else that you could think of that, because I had a TD Barnes on, who was the head of special projects out at Area 51, and he seems to think that all the Nimitz encounter and all these things are spoofing technology and not legitimate actual craft. So
is he believe that they're spoofing the observations of the pilots themselves?
He said he thinks that the technology is so advanced that the pilots are fooled, and he thinks that they are fooled into believing that they saw real physical craft when they did not, in fact.
Right. Yeah. So that's a good question. And spoofing and faking things is very hard, as it depends on how good the spoofing is, right? And so that's going to be really difficult to assess. I think that to assume that all of these things are due to spoofing is rather silly. Tim mentioned that, some of the first recorded UFOs are in 1945 or so. but there really are recordings that go back much further than that. I have several reports of disks coming out of the water and hovering next to ships and then taking off into the sky that go back to the 1850s. And I'm happy to send, happy to send that information to Tim to distribute that. So these things have been observed since well before the 1700s. And in fact, in the 1700s and 1800s, a lot of them were reported in astronomical journals because they were considered to be astronomical phenomena. Most astronomers don't know that. And scientists just assume that, well, scientists would have studied these things, right, or reported them. Well, they did, but they didn't get resolved and people forgot. That's common. And so the spoofing technology didn't exist in the 1940s and 1950s when Herman Oberth was giving his presentation and noting radar measurements up to Mach 55. So I would think that it would be foolish to just blow this all off and assume that it's all spoofing. If it's spoofing, then somebody's in trouble, because if we can be spoofed that well, then everyone ought to be paying attention and we ought to be trying to figure this out. So again, it's easy for people to flippantly say, oh, it's spoofing, oh, it's got to be Chinese or Russian. If that's really the case, then this is a national emergency and people aren't acting like it. So again, worrisome.
Mick West is one of those skeptics. He's made numerous, claims back and forth about the physicality, the object, the measurements, and the facts in your papers and stuff. Any comments on that, or the halo and anything like that? I don't know.
Yeah, a friend of mine who I do work on quantum theory has a very great, appropriate saying. It's a motivated skeptic can deny anything. So, or a sufficiently motivated skeptic can deny anything. So it's, you have to be careful of over skepticism because it leads to extreme ignorance, as Loeb says.
Yeah, I would, just to put my 2 cents in, I would tend to agree with that. And what intrigues me is, again, I've been focused on this nuclear correlation for the last 3 or 4 weeks, but there's a consistency to these reports that goes back decades. And, like in the context of the Air Force, right, maybe you could make the case that it's, bored airmen pranking someone or something like that. But the issue is that it goes back. I mean, you see very similar reports, in the 2000s that you see in the 1980s and the 70s and the 60s, and it goes all the way back, and they're describing the same things. And to me, that's the point where, and you're right, the spoofing technology, maybe it could be done now. I'm not sure about that, but could it be done back then? That's doubtful.
Right.
Yeah, and you just have to go sufficiently far back, and there's plenty of reports that go back, as far as you want, arbitrarily far. So,
and just because you have the technology where you could potentially spoof all this stuff doesn't mean that it was necessarily used.
Let me see. Well, Jeremy, let me go to Harold. Harold, do you want to go, sir?
Yes. My question is that you mentioned that there is this craft generate strong magnetic fields. Is there any evidence as to what magnitude of the magnetic field and what is the effect on the environment? Any leftover evidence, for example, around the affecting the other airplane that are taking the measurement or anything?
I know that there are some direct measurements. I don't know what the magnitudes are. And, but I know from the indirect measurements that these things can be quite powerful and can interact with electrical equipment and things like that. But those are good questions, and that's something that we're trying to assess at UAPX. We have gradient magnetometers that we're going to be employing in our next survey. So hopefully we'll get some data on that.
Well, thank you. That's an important question. I hope you find a way to solve it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great presentation.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Harold. Let me go to Michael Boyd next, sir.
Hello. So I have some questions about space time metric engineering. Tim, would it be possible for me to share my screen?
Well, yeah, I mean, it might be better to just, it might be better not to right now, because that might distract us from the Q&A.
Oh, well, I was just going to show the Tic-Tac video and ask some questions about space-time metric engineering related to that.
Yeah, sure. I would say go for it. I just don't want to get too far off on a tangent, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm not. It's totally on point. Okay, can you see that there, Kevin?
Yes.
Okay, so now here what I'm looking at is I took some of the frames out of the 2004 Tic-Tac video FLIR 1 and eliminated any of the 2x frames. You know what I mean by 2x? They're all 1x. You see the one over here. It's all in the 1x. There's
Right. Yep.
And the reason I did that, I used to work in company Hughes Aircraft Santa Barbara Research Center making the infrared detectors for like FLIR 1. and it changes the field of view is basically, and so you won't see these the optical effects will look different if you mix them. So what I was going to ask you about is, so if you see here on the left, there's these like little circles. You see those there?
Yeah, I can see that.
And then you see up above here is this dark balloon type thing. See that dark balloon over the top of the Tic-Tac?
Right.
There? And then over here on the left is this dark region where the Tic-Tac is moving to, okay? And then if you look at the Tic-Tac right around the bottom of the Tic-Tac, it looks like it's you know, it's changing the thermal signature of the surrounding area. Wouldn't you agree?
It looks like it on these images. Yeah, I hadn't noticed those effects on the images I have. So.
Right. Well, they don't show up on gimbal. They only show up on Tic-Tac.
Yeah, no, we analyzed these frames to get that final acceleration. It's accelerating away to the left and away at about 79 Gs.
Yeah, and you can see that it actually makes the Tic-Tac look like it's stretching.
Right.
You see that? And so those are what I would call a general relativity effect. And on the left is what I talked to Hal Putoff about this, and so my hypothesis is the region on the left is expanded space-time, and the region on the right is denser space-time. And basically it's kind of like, think of a bow and arrow, where you're pulling, the region on the right is the bow, and then it lets go and it pops out. So the question, a couple of issues that you raised is, I'm curious if that dark region is hotter and the white, like you were saying before, is colder. That would be interesting to know. And the other thing I'm curious about is you were describing this thing as it would like when it was going to move, it would get like this and then go like that, right?
Well, the discs do that. This is a Tic-Tac, so
would
it's hard
turn and then go in. The bottom of the disc would basically be going to the
Right.
direction of motion, correct? But this
Yeah.
obviously doesn't look like it's doing that, does it?
No, the Tic-Tacs, what they do is when they fly, they don't fly in the most aerodynamic way possible. They'll be off axis slightly and they'll just fly that way.
Now, the other things that I observed, if you look real closely, it shrinks a little bit right before it takes off. It gets really
Right.
tiny. So
Yeah, and that's hard because it could be rotating. It could be, it's a tic-tac shaped object, so it could be rotating slightly and changing.
yeah, what I'm thinking is it's going like this. It's like going like in a loop-de-loop, like this, to take off. So it's building up angular momentum is basically what it looks like it's doing to me. It's building up angular momentum too.
Oh, that's a good question. The motion could be complicated. I have other images from another source that shows tic-tacs tumbling. So yeah, they do some strange things.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
And it's hard, and it's again difficult to generalize because while the disks tip up and fly plane forward, the tic-tacs don't behave that way at all. They do other things. So these are possibly different technologies, possibly from different sources.
This tic-tac, part of what I heard was it was associated with a USO. There was a USO when it first appeared. They saw some turbulence in the water, like there was something down below it. So it sounds like there's a USO aspect to the tic-tac as well. Would you agree?
That's one of the hypotheses, is that it was a USO. I don't think it's been established what that object was. And I thought it strange because Fravor described it as looking like a submerged 747. And from my experiences flying off the coast of Southern California, that's what gray whales look like when you see a whale from the plane. So my hypothesis was that the object was a whale, underwater was a whale, and that the tic-tac was studying it or looking at it or something. And that was one of the hypotheses I had. So of course I presented this to SCU as a possibility, and there was a great bit of ridicule referring to Star Trek IV, right? Where they come back.
Oh yeah, that's what I was just thinking about when you said
whale,
that.
right?
That's funny you bring that up. I'm just thinking, oh yeah, wasn't that a Star Trek?
But I've watched whales out of airplanes, taking off from San Diego. So it's and they look like submerged aircraft. And in fact, I did find, after I made that proposition, somebody from Norway had heard about this, and they sent me an article from a Norwegian newspaper that talked about how whales look like 737s. And so.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
I think it's not clear what was underwater, and that would have been nice to know. It would have been nice to have a better description of what was underwater. It might have explained what the tic-tacs were doing or how they were related to the object underwater or what.
One final question on the tic-tac. One issue that came up is it seemed like the tic-tac somehow knew the rendezvous point before and appeared at the rendezvous point. And any thoughts on the possibility this could be ours?
That is a really good question. And that is one of the strangest things about that whole episode. We made a point of that in the paper we wrote, and let me find that, because we estimated the probability that could happen by chance, given that it could have gone anywhere within a 60-mile radius and chose to go to that point.
If I could interject really quickly, I've met several people who have used that to suggest that these are time travel.
Right. Yeah. So I don't think it's a strange thing, but so the probability that could happen, we estimated was about 8 1/1000ths of a percent or 9 1/1000ths of a percent. So
what would you figure the probability that the Navy was being spoofed by the Air Force?
That's hard to say. I mean, it's hard to say.
Better or worse?
It's hard to say in the Nimitz case, because in the Nimitz case, it was the situation was rather benign. For a lot of the encounters in the USS Roosevelt, a lot of those happened in the Persian Gulf, and those encounters happened when you had planes flying, taking off from the USS Roosevelt and flying into Syria. So that's a war zone. So now you have if you had the Air Force spoofing the Navy during a war zone would be treasonous. So that's hard to imagine.
But the Nimitz was a training flight, correct?
That was a training session off the coast.
So that would be a great opportunity.
That's possible, yeah.
So, okay, well, thanks for asking my questions.
Sure,
answering my questions. I appreciate all your answers.
sure, certainly, thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Okay, yeah, and it just occurred to me, what if the whale was actually the spoofing? But that's a completely separate. Yeah. Who would like to go next? Let me see who would like to go next. And we have tons and tons of comments. Let me see. Remy, did you? I see some comments from Remy. Did you have some questions, sir?
Hi, Tim. Hi, Kevin and everybody. No, I didn't have any questions at the moment. I'm just still taking
okay.
this in. Your presentation and Kevin, excellent presentations. Very gripping. That's all I say for now. Yeah? Okay.
Well, thank you, sir. Let me see. Who would like to go next? I'm just going to scroll through the questions here. Oops, there's one new one. And I am sure we have more questions. So Rob Chambers had asked, and this is up there a ways. Rob was wondering, this goes back to what you said about aerospikes. He was wondering about the, let me see, sorry. You know what, I probably shouldn't even get into that. Sorry, I'm getting lost in the questions. Rob, are you still with us? Let me see if Rob is still. Okay, and in the meantime, there's, okay. Oh, Remy, do you have a question now?
Yeah,
And,
can you hear me?
Yeah, and
okay.
if possible, could I get you to turn your camera on?
Oh, okay, I'll turn it on.
Thank you, sir.
Start video. There we go. Here we go. Wrong angle. You mentioned something about the Navy and the Air Force. I heard there's a bit of rivalry between them, where the Navy are responsible for ships, and very naval intelligence apparently have their own UFO program, but the Air Force naturally thinks it has dominion over that area. Do you know anything about that? There's a kind of gentle rivalry between them.
Yeah, that rivalry certainly exists, and but I don't know much about the rivalry, and I would be surprised if it would be taken to the point where you had one spoofing the other in a serious situation. Now, of course, we noted that the Nimitz case in 2004 was a training mission, so perhaps not as serious, but you are putting pilots' lives in danger, so potential danger. So I think that I would hope that would be treated more seriously.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Remy. Okay, let me go to Matthias. Matthias, go for it, sir. And could I get you to turn your camera on, Matthias?
Sure. Can you see me now?
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you, sir.
Okay, so it's about the Super 8 film. This blue image that was shown. Is this directional motion actually confirmed by the one that took the pictures, or is it inferred from something?
Well, it's from the Super 8 film, so I haven't seen the whole film, and that's one thing that we're going to take care of this fall, hopefully. So, so I've only seen frames of the film, and so from the description of the people who've seen it, say that they're traveling in that direction of motion. But
okay, so but are you going to get a hold of more frames soon?
Yep, that's the plan. Yep.
Oh, wonderful! That would be very interesting to.
Yeah, we're going to. Yeah, we're going to digitize the film and hopefully go over it in much more detail.
So that'll be on the UAP Expedition website.
I'm not sure if it'll be on that website, but we'll have it. I'll have it posted somewhere. Certainly on my research page at some point. You know, the aim is to publish this in scientific papers and then put it on the website. So.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you.
Sure.
Awesome. Thank you, Matthias. So let me see. Let me go back to Harold really quick. Harold, go for it, sir.
Yes, the other question I have is that I see a lot of the report that the pilot saw a craft, a UFO, but I rarely see, I see any the indication. They say, for example, the camera angle, the photo that they took, or when somebody taking a photo, what is the distance, what is the size of the UFO, or the UAP, the craft, for example, weight, dimensions, what speed is moving, and anything like that. I rarely see those details. Do you have any detail like that, an example to give us an idea? And thank you again.
Yeah, no, those are good questions. Typically you can't get that information all from just one photograph. And very often when these things are photographed, the conditions haven't been noted. So the person or pilots aren't noting which direction it's in, and none of that gets recorded. So so a lot of that information's lost. And so in just photographs from the public or even from the Navy aren't that useful because you can't reconstruct the whole situation. What we're trying to do at UAPX is to have multiple cameras set up some distances, known distances apart at known angles, so that when we do record these things from multiple cameras, we can triangulate the position. We can then estimate sizes. You can then estimate speeds and distances and all of those factors.
But what about witnesses? They say, oh, they saw a craft. But I never hear they say how big the craft was, or anything.
Well, you would be able to get size. If you could triangulate, you could probably get sizes. Once you know the distance, you can obtain the size. So that would be possible. To get how much the craft weighs, you wouldn't be able to get that.
Right,
We'll have to start
Thank you.
capturing them to do that, and I don't know if that's a good idea.
Yeah, I know it's a difficult subject, and you're trying your best. But thank you for your effort.
Thank you, Harold. Let me see. So we had a question actually that came in on YouTube. Kevin, they were asking if you guys had taken into account the aura or halo effect as an artifact of infrared.
Oh, that's a good question, and it could very well be. We haven't used the halo effect so much. We haven't done an analysis of this yet. So in that we would, what looks like a plasma sheath, we would want to record that with visible cameras and get spectra and all of this. And that's something that we're now gearing up toward. So.
Wonderful, wonderful. Let me see. I'm getting questions about uploading. Yeah, and if possible, well, if there's a copy of this presentation that I could put up, I can put mine up definitely. But with yours, I know you've delivered that at SCU. I would love to be able to put a copy of this up.
Yeah, that's fine. Or I presented it at the AIAA meeting, the American Institute for Aeronautics and Astronautics.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I can certainly. I can put my slides up too, and then contact you, and you can do that.
Sure.
The same.
Yeah. No, I'd be more than happy to link to them. Okay.
Great.
So let me see. Do we have any other questions? We're actually running a little bit ahead of time, but yeah, I think we're running a little bit ahead of time, Kevin. Well, I guess
That's
we can get.
unusual for me.
Yeah, I know that's unusual for a conference too. Usually, let me see. Rob's posting videos up, so no, we'll say I'm not going to do the video quite yet, unless Rob had a question. Oh, there's Sean and Jeremy. Let me go to Sean first. Sean.
Hey, how's it going? Can you hear me?
Yeah. Can you turn your camera on, Sean?
I don't have a camera. I'm sorry.
Okay.
All right. I have a quick question though. Do you think Bose-Einstein condensate is taking place on the surface of the craft in order for it to be cold?
These are all good questions. I have no idea. I'm not sure exactly how I would go about trying to detect something like that. And but
well, I saw in a document with Mirabos Technology, a guy was creating like a carbon glass over top of it, and then which was a great dielectric, and then he was making carbon glass with, I believe, excited oxygen. and it made it into a superconductor that could work under hot temperatures. And I believe that it was his idea that like when the microwave beam hits the craft, it creates Bose-Einstein condensate like all across the top of the entire craft, and it assists with the effect.
Oh, no, that's a good question. And I think what we're going to have to do is once we've collected more data and we see some hypotheses that may fit, more data is going to, the data we collect, we hope to rule out hypotheses as we go, right? And pare it down to a small set that we can deal with. And so once we have a small set of hypotheses, that will dictate what new data we might need and new instrumentation we might need. So this is going to be, it's a learning process, and it's going to be an evolution in our equipment that we use to record these things. And again, it's difficult because we can't overgeneralize. This may be, you might have one craft that creates Bose-Einstein condensates, and that's just that craft does that, and no others. And so that's one of the difficult points here. These things clearly are not the same, and they appear to be using different technologies, sometimes at different times. It's been noted in some cases that you've had discs take off, and they'll take off and make one type of sound, and then they hover above 20 feet above the ground or so for a moment, and then they just shoot into the sky super fast. So it could very well be that you're using one technology to get off the ground and another to get away once you're off the ground. And so things could be arbitrarily complicated.
Right on. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you, Sean. Okay, so why don't we do this? Why don't we take Jeremy Rys, and then I think we'll probably wrap things up with questions, if that's okay, because I think we're running low on questions. And so Jeremy, go for it, sir.
Okay, so I had my question was related to technologies specifically for detecting and capturing UAP on camera, not necessarily shooting them down and or capturing them physically, but capturing them on camera and building better sensors and detectors to take that data. I want to know if you had any advice for potential detectors or methods or equipment for that might be of use to say Galileo project or Harvard trying to capture these things or study them. You pointed out a couple interesting videos with some FLIR photography and stuff. FLIR cameras are good, but do you know of any other technologies or anything like that that might be useful?
Yeah, at this point, I'd recommend using a diverse array of technologies to see what works best. And it's going to be difficult because different craft may require different types of technology to best capture imagery or data. So I think at this point, using a diverse array of different types of cameras over multiple wavelengths would probably be wise.
Thanks.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, well, thank you, Jeremy. And Kevin, thank you very much. So let me do this. I'm going to mute everybody out and let me put it back on gallery view. And again, everyone, please give Kevin an enormous applause for an incredibly detailed and wonderful presentation, sir. Thank you very much, Kevin. And I know that you were juggling some scheduling issues also. So thank you for bringing it together for us.